Tennessee picks up commitment number 10 for the class of 2025 in Antoni Ogumoro. What does this mean for the class and the offensive line overall? Future quarterback George McIntyre, current quarterback Nico Iamaleava, all that and more. It's your Wednesday Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, good Wednesday morning, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Vols here on this beautiful, gorgeous morning. I'm your host, Eric Kane. Appreciate you for being here, making Locked On Vols your first listen each and every single day. You can always follow the show at _Kaner and at Locked On Vols, where you can watch, listen, subscribe, download, all that for free. Weekday mornings, 30 minutes or maybe a couple minutes more right here for all your Vols content. Got a fun show coming up today. Tennessee's new commits on the offensive line, Antoni Ogumoro. I've been practicing the entire time. Antoni Ogumoro. He commits to the Tennessee Volunteers. Bill Connelly's SP Plus rankings. Where does Tennessee rank in that, and what exactly are those rankings? Again, in that segment number 2. And then Ward Wednesday coming up in segment number 3. It's going to be a fun show, so let's go ahead and dive down deep into it. So it's Antoni. I know I have written right over it's Anthony. It's actually pronounced Antoni. Antoni Ogumoro. He becomes Tennessee's first offensive line commit for the class of 2025, and he's going to be an interior guy slotted towards guard or center, probably more guard than center, but he's an interior guy. 6'5", 290 pounds, living currently in the state of Oklahoma, but he spent time a little all over the place. North Carolina. He's only been in Oklahoma, to my understanding, really just for this semester. So since January, it's not even played for his high school football team yet. He's practiced in spring practice, but a guy, again, 6'5", 290 pounds, 2025 prospect. If you look at the On3 industry rankings, he's a 3-star prospect, national prospect ranking of 499, the 42nd interior offensive lineman, and the 9th rated prospect from the state of Oklahoma. On3 has him actually as the 25th rated interior offensive lineman, so depending on where you look, one recruiting service might have him ranked a little bit higher than the other. But he does become Tennessee's 10th offensive line commit, joining a class currently comprised of 5-star quarterback George McIntyre, 4-star defensive lineman Ethan Utley, 4-star tight end Jack Vanderselaere, 4-star wide receiver Radarius Jackson, 3-star defensive back cornerback Dylan Lewis, 3-star safety Sidney Walton, 3-star running back Justin Baker, 3-star wide receiver Joakim Dotson, and 3-star defensive back cornerback Tyler Redmond. Again, this commit, the latest, becomes the 10th in the class. And Tennessee's kind of spread out a little bit. You look at how these have been working. This is the first offensive line commit, and all the talk's been offensive tackle. David Sanders, Jalen Matthews, Josh Petty, that I think Tennessee actually likes him a little bit more on the inside. Baba Beloe, or however you say his name, he's not with Tennessee. Tennessee's not recruiting him any longer, but he's been a name at offensive tackle. There's been some names at offensive tackle. A lot of that's what driving the conversation in terms of recruiting, but not a whole lot of talk about the interior offensive lineman, and that's kind of what you have right here, the Antoni Ogumoro. And he becomes the first offensive lineman in the class. Tennessee now has 2 cornerback commits, 1 safety commits, 1 defensive line commits, 1 quarterback commits, 1 running back commit, 2 wide receiver commits, and 1 tight end commit. Tennessee has 1 5-star, 3 4-stars so far, and then 6 3-stars to go along with what's in the class right now. But again, this is just getting heated up a little bit. You got the A65 Live event coming up this weekend that's going to be massive on the campus of Tennessee, and hopefully we can talk about that later in the week as well. You've got June official visits getting ready to get underway, again in the month of June. That usually leads to July and August commitments, and so summer is always the hot time of the year, no pun intended, for college football recruiting, and I don't expect this year's class for Tennessee to be any different. So, in talking with some people, talking with Austin Price, who I'm going to try to get on the show for tomorrow to talk a little Tennessee recruiting. This latest commit for Tennessee, really, really good athleticism, good feet, strong in the interior, athletic, but knows that he's more of an interior guy. And so what's next for Tennessee? Well, in the interior, a guy from Jefferson County, my alma mater, was just recently offered by Tennessee, and Nick Moore, really good defensive lineman, Plays a little bit of everything on the offensive line, more tackle, I believe, for Jeff County, but he's slated as an interior offensive lineman, and Tennessee just offered him. We'll see if that picks up any steam and if there's going to be an official visit later in the month of June. But one thing to remember for Nick Moore's case, Spencer Riley, former Tennessee captain and center for the 1998 National Championship team, is his head coach at Jefferson County. And so I think that's a connection that you really, really like. And say Nick Moore does commit to Tennessee down the line, and say Tennessee wants him to play center, well, Spencer Riley there, being his high school football coach, is gonna be able to, to get him in gear before he gets to Tennessee. So I would say Nick Moore is a name to look out for on the interior. And then, of course, on the exterior, Jalen Matthews is a guy that I really think Tennessee's continued to be in a good spot with, and he has a commitment date out there that's not too far away from now. I like Tennessee and with Jalen Matthews. Tennessee continues to be in a good spot with David Sanders. He was here on campus for back-to-back weeks during spring practice. He's going to be at the the On3 Elite Series in Nashville next week. And so he's going to be just right down the road. Expect him to maybe come by and poke his head in the door here at Tennessee and say hello once again. But Tennessee likes where they are with him. But again, those are not done. And so I think the offensive line class started here with Antoni Ogumoro, has an opportunity to be pretty good, in my opinion. So that's kind of where we are right now. Tennessee gains its 10th commit for the class of 2024. And he chose, I didn't even say this, he chose Tennessee over Oklahoma, who is the quote-unquote home state school, but not necessarily home for Ogumoro, if that makes sense. Again, because he was in North Carolina last year. He's moved a little bit all over the place, originally from the islands. But Tennessee did beat out Oklahoma. Tennessee did beat out Kansas State. Tennessee did beat out, I believe, Oklahoma State in this one. And so some, another SEC program now in Oklahoma winning the services for the 6'5", 290-pound prospect. So I had a chance to watch the commitment video over at VolQuest.com, and it feels like Anthony made his Big Orange decision when he was here on his official visit. And the way Tennessee was with his family, the way Tennessee was and showing him the highlights of campus and how he would fit in this offense, and showing, the parents what it would mean to send their son here on Rocky Top. I think that made a really, really big difference in this recruitment. So I think Tennessee not only recruited Antony, but recruited the family and did a really, really good job in that regard. So recruiting never stops. Tennessee gets a commit from 3-star offensive lineman Antoni Ogumoro, and I promise you I'll be able to have that name roll off the tongue the more and more I say this, for the class of 2025. Hey, when we come back, let's take a look at the SP Plus rankings from ESPN's Bill Connelly. Where does Tennessee stack up in that regard? That is coming up next. We continue on here with a Wednesday edition of Locked On Vols. Passion, drive, patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance: superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts to choose from for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money is bad. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car turn it into that MVP and bring home those huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive today at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay's Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. So I want to take a look. Let's get our pocket protectors out. Let's put on our glasses, okay? Let's nerd out a little bit, if you'll allow me. So many times I talk stats and people get lost in the stats, and that's easy because I don't make it easy to understand. But we're going to dive into some stats here, okay? This is the nerd stats for the sports fan in you and the sports fan in me. But if you like to dive down deep into the numbers, then you probably know this man I'm about to refer to, and that is ESPN's Bill Connelly. He puts out these things called the SP Plus rankings, okay? And he just updated his offseason SP Plus rankings for the post-spring practice edition. So essentially heading into the summer. Well, what is SP Plus rankings? They are projections for the upcoming season. Preseason predictions are based on these three factors that comprise the FP Plus rankings: returning production, recent recruiting, and recent history. Returning production is defined as this. The returning production numbers are based on rosters that have been updated as much as possible to account for transfers and attrition. The combination of last year's SP Plus rankings and adjustment based on the returning production makes up more than half of the projections formula. So much of what are the SP Plus rankings, more than half, is coming from returning production on the roster. Also, recent recruiting, that's defined as this. This piece informs us of the caliber of the team's potential replacements and or new stars in the lineup. It is determined by the last few years of recruiting rankings, diminishing in order, meaning the most recent class carries the most weight, so on and so forth. This is also impacted by the recruiting rankings for the upcoming transfers, and acknowledgments that the art of the roster management is now heavily dictated by the transfer portal. This piece makes up about 1/3 of the projections in the formula. Bill Connelly didn't always include transfers to the roster, and he made that change, I want to say, last offseason cycle, just noting that last sentence there. Where we are in college football, you can't not account for transfers via the transfer portal, so I'm glad he made that change. The third piece of information that comprises the SP Plus rankings, recent history. It's defined as this. Using a sliver of information from the previous 4 seasons or so gives us a good measure of overall program health. It stands to reason that the team has played well for 1 year, is less likely to duplicate that effort than a team that has been good for years on end, and vice versa, right? So that means, for Tennessee example, Tennessee was 7-5, Tennessee was 10-2, Tennessee was 8-4. Tennessee's been pretty solid for 3 years under Josh Heupel, so they're going to get the benefit of the doubt in the SP Plus rankings to continue that up in the next couple of seasons. So all that and more. Hope you have a good understanding of what the SP Plus rankings are. What does this mean? Well, where is Tennessee ranked in the post-spring SP Plus rankings? Tennessee comes in at number 16, according to Bill Connelly, with an SP Plus ranking, or with an SP Plus numerical value at 19.0. Bill Connelly says that the returning offensive SP Plus, or for offensive SP Plus, is 14th in the country. The defensive SP Plus is 19th in the country, and the special teams SP Plus is ranked 52nd in the country. And again, what is FP Plus? Returning production, recent recruiting, recent history. So he's saying that Tennessee's offense in this category is ranking 14th. Tennessee's defense ranks 19th. Tennessee's special teams ranks 52nd. So offense and defensively, you're a top 20 team, according to the factors that go into these rankings: returning production, recruiting, overall success. That's good. Anytime you're considered a top 20 team on both sides of the football, you're typically going to win about 9-10 ball games. And that's good. That's where you want to be, because if you win 9-10 ball games, you're contending for a spot in the 12-team college football playoff. Yes, I understand 9 wins. The wins got to be really good, because if you're 9-3 and you make it to the college football playoff, you're probably upsetting a top 5 team, right? 10-2 in this climate, it's probably going to get you in. So if you, again, have top 20 rankings in both offense and defense, that means your football team is pretty good. What about other SEC opponents, other SEC teams that came in front of Tennessee? Well, according to the post-spring practice SP Plus rankings from Bill Connelly over at ESPN, Georgia comes in at number 1, Texas comes in at number 4, Alabama comes in at number 5, Ole Miss at number 8, LSU at number 9, Missouri at number 11, Texas A&M at number 13, Oklahoma at number 15, and Tennessee at number 16. So Tennessee is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Tennessee is 9th in the SEC with the highest SP Plus rankings. And again, this is not meant to be preseason rankings. This is not meant to duplicate what the coach's preseason rankings is going to be, or the AP Polls preseason rankings is going to be. And he even notes this up here at the top. He says, these projections aren't intended to be a guess at what the AP Top 25 will look like at the rest of the season, or to begin the season. These are simply early off-season power rankings based on the information we have been able to gather to date with recent history, recent recruiting, and returning production. So Tennessee, top 20 team, number 16 in the country, number 9 in the SEC. That's, again, this whole thing about recruiting rankings. You can be, 11th or 12th in the country, which is really, really good, but that means you might be 7th or 8th in the SEC. This is kind of like what this is with the SP Plus rankings. We move on down to look at Tennessee's opponents and where they kind of rank. Notable opponents, NC State comes in ranked at number 29th in the SP Plus rankings. Oklahoma is ranked at 15th, one spot ahead of Tennessee. Arkansas is ranked at 46th. Florida is ranked 33rd. Alabama is ranked 5th. Kentucky is ranked 25th. Mississippi State is ranked 68th. Georgia, of course, is ranked number 1. Average SP Plus rating by conference. The SEC leads the conference at 16, or leads the nation in terms of power conferences at 16.1, followed by the Big Ten at 9.9. There's a huge gap there. The Big 12 is third at 5.6. The ACC is fourth at 5.0. And then you get into your first group of 5, and that's the Sun Belt, followed by Mountain West, AAC, Conference USA, and then MAC. Top 3 conferences by average offensive SP+. The SEC, the Big 12, the ACC. Top 3 conferences by average defensive SP Plus rankings. The Big 10 is number 1, SEC is number 2, and ACC is number 3. An approximate college football playoff contenders list. Let's see here. Tennessee is not mentioned in that section, but Tennessee is mentioned in this section. Odds of an SEC team going 10-2 or better. Tennessee comes in at 21st in that category with a 23.4% chance of going 10-2 or better. That's interesting, right? I mean, Alabama's given over a 50% chance. Georgia's given nearly 80% chance, and they have a 5th toughest strength of schedule. Missouri is given a 63% chance, which I find very, very enlightening to say the least, if I'm reading this correctly. Oklahoma only has a 6.5% chance of a team going 10-2 or better, according to these SP Plus rankings. Again, we're getting in the weeds here, folks. What else do I have? Post-spring practice returning production rankings. Tennessee is on down here at, I want to say... Okay, Tennessee is 108th in the category. Tennessee returns 48% of its offense, or returning production overall, offense, defense, special teams. Tennessee is ranked 108th, returning 48% of its starters. Offensively, Tennessee is ranked 101st, returning 50% of its starters, and defensively, Tennessee is ranked 111, returning 47% of its starters. But again, defense is a rotational position, so I don't put a whole lot of weight in that, right? Offensively, sure, you lose some guys. You lose an offensive tackle. You lose a starting left guard. You lose a starting wide receiver. You lose 2 valuable running backs, and you lose your starting quarterback. But some of those areas you're going to get better, in my opinion. Lance Hurd's going to be better than Gerald Mincey. We'll see if Sham or whoever starts left guard is going to be better than Ollie Lane. I don't think you're going to be better in the backfield, even though I think Dylan Sampson's a pretty good player. But I think you're going to be better at wide receiver instead of having Ramel Keaton out there. So you know what I'm saying? You got to take all this with a grain of salt. But anyway, wanted to bring that to the show because I know a lot of you guys are nerds like me and look up this stuff and kind of dive down deep into the numbers. Tennessee ranked 16th in the post-spring SP Plus rankings when you combine everything involved, special teams, defense, offense, when you account for recent history, recent recruiting, and returning production. Tennessee is ranked number 16 in the land in the SP Plus post-spring practice rankings, per ESPN's Bill Conley. All right, that's a mouthful. Let's talk to another nerd, another guy that loves the SP Plus rankings. His name is Josh Ward. We'll dive into a little Ward Wednesday. That is coming up next, so we continue on here with the Wednesday Locked On Vols.
Hey, Josh, you know, Danny White loves to say all everything school and has kind of coined that phrase the last couple of weeks and everything. But when you sit here and think about what Tennessee accomplished this past weekend, it just kind of furthers that narrative. Tennessee baseball, again, SEC regular season champions. The women's tennis team goes to the Final Four. The men's golf team is doing some work. I mean, this is just here recently. It feels like Tennessee truly is an all everything school.
Tennessee is successful in pretty much everything right now. Now, at different levels, like the Lady Vols basketball program actually had a pretty good season. It's just that their expectation is to compete for SEC and national titles, and they haven't been in that position. But so many sports across the board are competing at a national level or are hoping to make that jump. Like Tennessee football is actually behind other sports in terms of accomplishments, but where football was and where it has the potential to go this year and what it did in 2022, that's a big part of it, has changed the conversation around Tennessee sports. The truth is that most fans, almost all fans, are focused on what happens with Tennessee football, then basketball, then you start to work in baseball, softball, Lady Vols basketball into the equation. The other sports don't get attention unless they are doing something spectacular, but they're all doing something like that right now. And I think that goes to what's happened behind the scenes. You have different coaches in different sports that have been hired by different athletic directors. So all different kinds of people, including people who no longer work at UT, have helped in the position that it's in right now. But I think in terms of direction of UT's athletics, with Chancellor Donde Plowman, support of President Randy Boyd, leadership of Danny White, it has caused everybody to feel really good about where things are right now and the direction of all these different sports, including the big ones we talk about so often.
Yeah, you kind of led me to my next question. I was going to say you had Rick Barnes, who was hired by Dave Hart. You have Tony Vitello, who was hired by John Curry. You had the volleyball coach, who I believe they went to a Sweet 16 here this past year, who was hired by Philip Fulmer. And, of course, you have Heupel hired by Danny White. And Danny White's made the Lady Vols basketball hire with Kim Caldwell and so on and so forth. My point being, there's been so many different cooks in the kitchen that's comprised this head coaching itinerary for or directory for Tennessee athletics here right now. So if you want to praise somebody, would it be Danny White and Donnie Plowman just for creating such a positive work environment right now? I mean, there's kind of a lot of praise to go around, but it's gotta have somebody that can kind of put it all together, I guess.
Yeah, I tend to break the praise up. So like with Tennessee basketball, Rick Barnes gets all the credit for where the program is. The players play a huge role. He knows he has to go get the players to have success and his coaching staff, but that's Rick Barnes. I can't sit here and say Danny White has done a ton to make Tennessee basketball what it's been here over the last few years. With Tennessee football, Danny White brought in Josh Heupel, so he gets a ton of credit. I can't sit here and say that Tennessee baseball is having a ton of success because of Danny White. I would point back to Tony Vitello, who was brought in by John Curry, who is now the athletic director at Wake Forest. When Kelly Harper was the head coach of the Lady Vols basketball team, the Big Five sports, football, the basketball programs, baseball, and softball, had 5 head coaches hired by 5 different athletic directors. So that's why I break up the credit, because the coaches have to lead the program. Obviously, the players then have to go out and perform, and they're getting more credit and more revenue distribution in whatever way you want to come up with for what they're able to do. So credit is legitimately being spread out in different ways. But if you want to talk big picture, the state of Tennessee athletics, I think Donnie Plowman's presence is very important. And I think Danny White's one of the best ADs in the country. So if we're looking into the future, things that are being done, what Tennessee is building, I think that all is in better hands with Danny White helping lead the way. But he'll tell you, we need to succeed on the field, on the court. The changes they're going to be making to the Food City Center, the entertainment district that's around it, but by basketball and football, becomes less attractive if the teams aren't good. So can they have success? That's going to be a huge deal in how everything else is viewed.
Yeah, that $95 million renovation project over at Lindsey Nelson Stadium should be done by opening day next year. It's according to the timeline that we have right now. So I'm excited to have that press box come down and actually get a normal, working press box, which will be nice for next year. But also, it'll be good on the ice for recruits and for fans alike. And that's
that'll be. And to jump in real quick, that'll be great for what Tony Vitello is going to try to continue to do, because he has built Tennessee into this position. He has recruited at a high level. He has brought transfers in from other big programs, despite some of the challenges he's faced from a facility standpoint. That's why Tony gets even more credit. He has put Tennessee on the national stage. Danny White also recognizes that, and Danny White is helping push for the improvements that should help Tony continue what he's done, because he's earned it.
Tennessee baseball wins a share of the SEC title over the weekend, sweeping South Carolina, getting help from Vanderbilt to take down Kentucky on the final game of the regular season. So all this baseball team does is just continues to win. And I want to have this conversation with you because it's something we talk about during basketball season a lot. I'm not trying to act like conference tournaments don't mean anything because there's an automatic qualifier there for teams that might need it or teams that need some more wins to get in that large bid. But, for Tennessee basketball this past year, for Tennessee baseball right now, what a wasted week, right? I mean, it means absolutely nothing. So how do you kind of go and combat that? Obviously they're going to try to win, but how do what's your mindset if you're Tony Vitello entering this week, knowing that you've locked up a top 8 seed pretty much, and nothing you do this week is going to matter when it comes to hosting an actual regional the following week where the games do matter.
Yeah, it's funny. I think I figured out here recently that conference tournaments in different sports, they only matter until you win them. And then you stop caring about it or wanting to. The Tennessee basketball program took 43 years from 79 until 22, and they won the basketball tournament. And then we stopped talking about Tennessee wanting to go win the SEC tournament. Now, baseball, they did it a couple of years ago, and it's about fast forwarding. So I look at this week, Eric, is about trying to stay healthy with the arms, trying to get A.J. Russell some work, and then just getting ready for the NCAA tournament, because we know Tennessee will host a regional, and then we know if Tennessee advances, it's going to host a super regional, and that's going to help Tennessee. And what the ultimate goal is, maybe the only goal at this point remaining, to get to Omaha for a chance to win the College World Series. So everything that happens in the next several days is about how it helps Tennessee be ready for the NCAA tournament. So the perfect world would be, hey, you go win the SEC tournament, you're the number 1 overall seed, and then you go win the national championship. And you're talking about one of the best seasons in college baseball history because of how hard it's been for a number 1 overall seed to go win the national championship. But it's difficult to plan for a perfect world. So I would say get A.J. Russell some work, figure out what role, if he can play a role for you in the NCAA tournament, and then get everybody healthy and get a little bit of work and then get home and rest up. And that also has to help that, Tennessee's going to be at home for the next few weeks once everything wraps up for with the SEC tournament and trying to get back to Omaha.
Last thing out the door, it was ESPN's post-spring practice top 25. It came out earlier this week, and Tennessee checked in at number 15. It was the 7th highest ranked SEC team in the top 25 for this ESPN poll. And it was 1 spot behind LSU, 2 spots behind NC State. Your thoughts on Tennessee's ranking in that specific poll and how NC State's a couple spots ahead of them?
It has seemed like in the SEC, most of these rankings have Tennessee 6th or 7th. So you mentioned 7th from ESPN. We had Jesse Simonton from On3 on Josh and Swain on Monday. He put Tennessee 6th in his post-SEC rankings, and I think that's about right. Tennessee and LSU are comparable. Missouri, I think, gets the nod right now because they had the head-to-head advantage. They bring back Brady Cook and Luther Burden, and their schedule. The schedule is factoring in, I think, for a lot of these conversations, and you asked about NC State. I think that has to be a factor as well. They bring in a nice transfer at quarterback in Grayson McCall, who has to now prove it at a higher level, transferring in from Coastal Carolina, and some other transfers that are expected to help at the skill positions on offense. But the schedule is also favorable for NC State. But you can look elsewhere and see a lot of rankings that have NC State behind Tennessee. And I think if you line up the teams, that is where most would have Tennessee ahead of the Wolfpack, who have a nice roster, but a roster as good as Tennessee's, I have a difficult time saying that. ESPN's SP Plus, which I like to pay attention to, has a pretty noticeable gap between Tennessee ahead of NC State. And the odds makers have said Tennessee is maybe a touchdown favorite against NC State for that game in Charlotte. So I think NC State ahead of Tennessee can only be because of schedule, because I think head-to-head, they have to prove it, of course, and they'll get a chance to on a neutral field. I think head-to-head going in, Tennessee should have the advantage over NC State. And again, back to the SEC, schools that are getting a nod ahead of Tennessee like Ole Miss and Missouri, I understand why. Tennessee versus LSU is very comparable. They're both going to have new starting quarterbacks, at least in full-time roles. I would give Tennessee an advantage right now over LSU because I think quarterbacks close going in, line of scrimmage play, I think across the board with Tennessee's defensive line could be a slight advantage to the Vols, but they're great at tackle on the offensive side. And again, these two teams don't play each other either this upcoming season. So we're arguing about teams that won't actually face each other on the field this upcoming fall.
Yeah, I was going through Tennessee versus LSU, for rankings purposes on yesterday's show, and I'm like, well, Garrett Nussmeier's more proven. He's never been a full-time starter, but he's played a couple of games throughout his career, so like I almost get it from that respect.
Yeah.
Sure, they're good at tackle, but Tennessee's great at defensive line. And then I was like, but look at the explosives. I mean, you lose 2 NFL wide receivers, 3 in the last 2 years, if you want to put Keyshawn Boutte in that conversation. Then look what Tennessee has this year. So we get caught up in that conversation. It's like, oh, wait, Tennessee's not even going to play LSU. Who cares, right? Like, it's May.
Which actually, if you get back to the schedule, I again think that can be an advantage to Tennessee. The Vols do have to play Alabama and Georgia. Everybody recognizes how tough that is. Going to Oklahoma is not easy by any means. That's a really tough game that Tennessee will play to open up in the SEC. But from a schedule standpoint, Arkansas, Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, Kentucky at home, Florida at home, there are advantages for Tennessee versus some of these other teams and their schedules in the SEC, except for Missouri. Missouri goes in, I think, with the most comfortable SEC schedule.
Josh, what's coming up the rest of the week on the show as you host Josh and Swain with VFL Jason Swain on 99.1 The Sports Animal?
Yeah, getting ready for Hoover, but as we've done in this conversation, more about the NCAA tournament, what happens there, Tennessee's football offseason. Every day there's a new list. We talk about them, plus the portal watch that has been Tennessee basketball. So different sports, different things for people to talk about if you're a Tennessee fan. Tony Vitello has extended the calendar for Tennessee fans. You get an extra month, roughly, to look for sports on the field to be excited about, plus Tennessee softball, what they're doing. There's a lot for Tennessee fans to cover. We're doing that on Josh and Swain, plus with our free newsletter that comes out Friday morning.
And you can sign up for that for free in the show description of this specific show. Josh, thanks so much, man.
Thanks, Eric.
All right, that is Josh Ward, co-host of Josh and Swain on 99.1 The Sports Animal. He comes on our show every Wednesday in the third segment for something we like to call Ward Wednesday right here on Locked On Vols. So appreciate him. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. We'll have Max Chadwick of Pro Football Focus coming on the show tomorrow on Thursday. We'll get you set for the SEC tournament and everything else in regards to Tennessee athletics. That and more coming up tomorrow and the rest of the week right here on Locked On Vols. Appreciate you guys as always, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.